Fairytail of New York, Kirsty MacColl, the Pogues, etc. And I'm joined now by Frank Murray, the manager of the Pogues back in the day, who first suggested the idea of the Christmas song. Frank, you're just saying there, as that was playing there, you kind of think that every year you said something along these lines, you get sick of it, and you don't.
Yeah, you know, if you're walking around there, the first time is usually in a supermarket or somewhere like that, you know, you hear it and you go, oh, here it is again, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you just realise you're totally in love with the song. You know what I mean? Some songs you just keep hearing and now, no matter how good it is, you tend to think, okay, give me a break from that. You know?
Oh, listen, take us back. Well, I'll tell you one thing, if you're working in that shop. Oh, no, the bloody Pogues again.
Yeah, I know, different
and it's
story.
all, by the way, I want to get to that too. What is it about Christmas songs? They're all from the 70s and the 80s, except for, like, obviously White Christmas and a few of those ones. There haven't been many.
I think John Lennon started it, actually, him and Yoko.
Yeah.
With Happy Christmas, you know. And I remember being blown away. I just moved to London at the time. I remember being blown away by John and Yoko doing a Christmas song. Yeah. And I also remember John Lennon saying like he'd like to release it every year, whether it was a hit or not, just put it out every year after year after year, you know. And I kind of had the same idea with that Pogues thing. But I think after that, people started. Then, you know, you got Slade and Roy Wood and
all those things,
kind of
I wish
things.
It could be Christmas,
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay, well, put us into sort of where were the Pogues at the time? They were pretty damn huge at the time of this.
No, we were just getting huge.
Right.
Because we earlier on that summer, at the end of that summer, we had released "If I Should Fall from Grace with God."
Yeah,
that record. And so that got great reviews and stuff. And then the Christmas single, this came out as a Christmas single. But the importance of this is it was a crossover. So people who had heard of the Pogues, people who didn't like the Pogues just because what they read about them or whatever, this was a game changer. You know what I mean? People heard this song and you kind of had to take it serious.
Well, who were the Pogues? How did it come together?
What did I say? What, the Pogues come together? I haven't got a clue, really. It's Jem and Shane had started off as, you know, busking together. And then Spider got involved. And James, and then they got Andrew the drummer, you know. But it started off with Jem and Shane.
And what kind of background are we talking about music-wise?
Jem, I think, had, you know, sort of like West Coast American, you know what I mean, from talking to him, like around that period. And obviously punk. Shane was punk, but also with a great grounding in the foundation stones of rock and roll, you know, R&B, country, whatever, you know, soul music, you know. So, you know, Shane was well versed in, like, historically or academically in rock and roll as well, you know. So, and, but Shane also had his Irish background, you know, been brought up Irish in Britain. So I guess after punk, somebody suggested to them, I forget the guy's name, I was reading it recently. Some guy suggested to them about doing some Irish, I think they called them Republican songs or rebel songs. And I think Spider and Shane had a band called the New Republicans, maybe. And I think they played one or two shows and that fell apart. But out of that came the Pogues.
How did you get involved?
There was two bands coming out. There were a few bands coming out of Camden at that time, you know, and there was the Men They Couldn't Hang.
Yeah.
And they'd been talking to me about management and stuff like that. And then one day I got a phone call off Jem from the Pogues, wanted to talk to me. So we went and had a meeting, we discussed a few things, and then they said, yeah, okay, you can be our manager. So it was really that simple.
Do you know, at a time when punk was supposedly kind of over in some ways, the Pogues were kind of a punk band, really.
Yeah, they were a punk band.
Attitude-wise.
And Shane today is still a punk. I think Shane is the last punk standing, probably, you know what I mean? But definitely the punk attitude just went right through the band, you know.
I remember a night here in the very corridors of RTE, a very famous night. Beep was involved along the way, and it was a discussion between kind of the more traditional Irish music types and the Pogues of how you were ruining music.
Yes. Well, people did get on that high horse. And I think they saw the Pogues as a huge threat, you know, they're going to destroy Irish music or whatever like that. But it was a different, as I said, it was a different kettle of fish. The Pogues were doing a different kind of Irish music than instrumentalists from the west coast of Ireland or whatever, people who are purists in the traditional mode. And they came more from the Clancy Brothers, Dubliners, kind of ballad singers, that kind of culture. That's where they were coming from. And that's where Shane, that was the well he went to, to when he started to write.
But like things like The Sick Bed of Cuchulainn, A Rainy Night in Soho and all these, I mean, like, he really was writing brand new stuff that's going to last for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I'll never forget the first time I heard Sick Bed of Cuchulainn, going in to the studio during Rum Sodomy and the Lash. And he just had nailed it. I just thought, I've just heard something brand new here, And, you knew it could only have been written by somebody, part of the diaspora.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It wouldn't have been written by somebody here at home, And then Rainy Night in Soho, again, that's a game changer, that's a serious song, And I'm really surprised there hasn't been a lot more covers of that.
Yeah.
There are some good covers, but like worldwide, there's a woman called Mary McPartland, and she does a beautiful version of that, that I like.
What about the covers of Fairytale in New York? What do you think of them? There's many of them out there. I
can't get my head around them. I don't know why, but it's just like, even when somebody else sings, when Kirsty's not here, God rest her soul, but when I hear someone else sing it, it's not good enough for me. You know what I mean? Now, I haven't heard a lot, and there might be some wonderful people out there who have sung it with the band, but I have this kind of like loyalty, I suppose, to Kirsty. I mean, I managed Kirsty for a long time before I managed the Pogues and stuff, and so she's really dear and special to me,
Okay, well, look, you mentioned one earlier on, which is probably the genesis of the whole thing for you. So I'm just going to play this as well. Being at the time of year that does me after being in it, this is the John Lennon thing that inspired you, if you like.
I don't think it is.
No, it's great. Now, it would have been John himself that did it and not just the music, right? Is that what you're saying, yeah? Like, I mean, the whole idea that he would do a Christmas song, yeah?
Yeah, but he wanted to change it as well. He wanted to shake up Christmas as well. And then he thought, well, if it is, I presume, I'm speaking on his behalf now, it's very cheeky of me, but he was more into like peace on earth to men of goodwill, I mean, Christmas is about, I suppose, like in Christian terms, supposed to be the Prince of Peace been born, you know what I mean? So it really is supposed to be about peace. So.
And you actually went and said, listen, guys, you should write a Christmas song.
No, I didn't. I said we should record a Christmas song.
As in one from the past and do your own version of it.
So that was the presumption that we spoke about. I said, look, it'd be a good idea if we released a song for Christmas.
Yeah.
And they kind of said, yeah, they'd be up for it. And then what I thought was happening, I gave them a song. I thought a few songs would go into the hat, you know what I mean? And they'd go away, rehearse, try a couple of versions of different songs, and then if it came good, well and good, And after about a week or two, I remember Jam coming to me and saying, like, this is not working out. And he said, do you mind if we write our own song? I said, no, that's brilliant. But the whole idea that they came around to thinking about writing their own song, was just brilliant. So, and also Shane had been writing those, he was on a roll at that time, particularly after Rum Sodomy and the Lash and then the Poetry in Motion EP, So, anyway, we turned out our first version of Fairytale in New York.
And the first version of Fairytale in New York, is it much different than the one we know?
It is, yeah. And it's more Irish. Now, I haven't listened to it in a long time, but it's really...
What do you mean more Irish?
Well, he's singing about, like, things in the County Clare and stuff like that, do you know what I mean? I guess immigration or whatever. And I must admit, now, I haven't listened to it in a long time. And Cott's vocal approach was different than Kirsty's.
Cott O'Riordan was the vocalist on the original. Yeah, that's right, yeah. Okay, so, and how did Kirsty get involved?
Kirsty got involved...
was she married to Steve Lillywhite at the time?
She was married to Steve Lillywhite at the time.
The producer of U2 and the Stones and a million others.
Yeah. I had suggested to I know I had suggested definitely to Spider and Shane, even while Cott was in the band, that we should have someone else sing that piece, Now, in all fairness to Cott, I must say, the things I heard, I don't know whether I was listening to, I don't think I was ever listening to a finished version. I was just listening to demos,
Yeah.
And I had said, and each time I'd say this to Shane and Spider, they used to look at each other and laugh. And I thought they were laughing at the idea of Kirsty, but they weren't. They were more saying, well, are you going to tell that to Cod Frank, or who's going to tell her? You know what I mean? So,
as in, she's booted from the vocals.
Yeah. And we'd want someone else in. But as it happened, anyway, Cod left the band. And then I got Steve Lillywhite on board to produce the next record. And on the next record was Fairytail, New York. We were going to record it. But I had always put Kirsty forward to sing that part, because I had worked with Kirsty. You know, I'd done 2 albums with her. We'd had a good few hit singles together. And
from a family of massive musical tradition.
Yes, but, you know, I knew her voice, you know what I mean, really, really well. I knew the limits. In fact, there was really very few limits on Kirsty's voice. But I just knew that was going to work. And also, from a manager's point of view, I must say, I always liked the idea of duets, particularly if the people meant something.
Like a call and response almost.
That part, but like putting 2 people together, you know what I mean? The Pogues featuring Kirsty MacColl, you know what I mean? That can
But the lyric was written in such a way that it had to be sung by a woman.
Oh, yes, I know that. But that lyric changed, you know, from the first one it caught, you know.
Did you worry about what might be considered to be, I don't know, bad language or naughty for the daytime language or anything? No, obviously not. No. But you did want to play daytime, and you did get through to an audience that never knew who the Pogues even were.
Of course, yeah, but it never would have come into our head to change something, you know, the lyric, you know, for that. And, you know, I've seen some people try to sing that song, and I've seen people refuse to sing Scumbag, Maggot, Cheap, Lazy Faggot because it's un-PC, you know, it's not politically correct. And they should, it's not them saying, it's 2 characters in a song. This thing is like a movie almost, you know what I mean? And you might as well say to Robert De Niro, going to Martin Scorsese, I'm not going to use that language. Do you know what I mean? It's just, you're in the song, you get into the characters, and you say what the characters say, you know what I mean? There's no skirting around it. Yeah.
There was never any talk with Shane just exactly that he said, listen, I've got a Christmas song, but this is taken from a slightly different angle. It's a bunch of like bowsies who've blown it, basically.
No, it was just the Pogues didn't really work like that. It would be a case of like, I've just written the song, let's go and do it, you know.
Right. And Pogues wise at the end, like, why did the Pogues fall apart? Or every band falls apart, does it? Have you got an hour?
I'm going to start writing a book next year, and I'll put that in it.
Oh, yeah.
But I think everybody left, everybody got tired, and they went into a downward spiral, I guess, after, you know what I mean? Shane went, they were left there on their own. I'm not sure whether they even had management, you know, so they just seemed to go into some bad spiral anyway.
Because wasn't there some story about some one final straw of when you were there and there was an ambassador to America or something? What happened?
Well, we were on a very, very... We were under a lot of strain on a tour in Australia.
You were all tired and emotional, yeah.
We were, and we had actually taken that to Australia with us. You know, I mean, there was tension in the band. And mainly because of Shane's behaviour. And Shane would walk on stage, you know, probably sing 1 song, 2 songs, and then he'd just walk off. And so you had people sort of like wondering where Shane was, and then he'd probably come on for the encore. So there was a lot of that going on. So there was a lot of tension. But so we were in Canberra anyway, and someone said to me, the Irish ambassador's here and he'd like to come in and say hello to the band. And I said, yeah, great. Just when the show was over, we'll have him come in, shake hands, say hi, whatever that. But when it all happened, the band were really in a foul mood. I know Shane had walked off the stage.
As can happen on tour.
Yeah. And so the ambassador came in and there was no... They kind of barely said hi or raised their eyes up or said anything. Anyway, I lost my rag with them. Or,
you should be more respectful to this man.
No, not much more respectful. We just say, how's it going? You know what I mean?
How's it going?
These guys were making a lot of loving was based on being their Irishness or whatever like that. But anyway, just as a mark of respect. I mean, the man was there in a private capacity. He wasn't there in some kind of legal capacity. But so, and that didn't happen. So I went back to the hotel and they were all sitting in a room, you know, or whatever. Anyway, I opened the door and I got laid into them about their behaviour. But for not what I thought been like at least saying hello and spending 10 minutes with the guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I went in, and that made things, bad between me and the band. But it really was. But I mean, everybody was cracking up then. I really had enough. And when I was screaming, I was probably screaming for the last 9 months.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It wasn't all that
Pent up.
particular. You know?
Yeah. Well, okay. So the Pogues, just as a matter of interest in terms of outside England and outside Ireland, I know they made massive dents, huge dents in America. How well did it go down in America, the Pogues? Each tour, did it get better, did it get bigger, which is the way it's supposed to be?
But it's funny, they were always big on the coastal places.
Yeah.
It was very hard to break the Midwest, and the South, like all that eastern seaboard got us, Boston all the way down, New York, Philadelphia, all of those people got us. Chicago, maybe, Detroit, and then Los Angeles. And we'd done fairly well in other places, you know what I mean? And we'd done some good touring, but we still needed to work at it. There was one thing about the Pogues that was tough, and that was the record sales did not always reflect their popularity, the huge popularity and the craziness that went on with the shows.
Another thing was, I would have seen it as probably the golden era of videos as well. There's a thing in the paper here this morning by Richie Taylor in the Examiner, and he says, Spider, Stacey. Spider, by the way, called up to my house one time and said, we've got this great Christmas song. I didn't hear, he didn't have it with him at the time, but yeah. Spider Stacey, the Pogues, has revealed how the band had a bust-up with the cops when they were filming the video for Fairytail in New York and Manhattan. The video wasn't exactly like, this is such a great song, such an amazing song, it's going to actually change everything. And even the first time I heard it, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And yet the video was kind of typical Pogues, slightly thrown away, was it? Or was that a bit unfair?
I think that's unfair. I thought it was an incredible video. There's no other video around that you compare it to, around that time. There's nothing shot like that.
Black and white and smoke?
Well, no, not. Black. It's easy to turn anything into black and white. You know what I mean? But it must work. Atmospherically. And that. I think that the situation where the band are playing live in that video, it's based on. I think it's maybe a Charlie Parker video we had seen or something like that. Based on that. And then the action stuff. With Shane. The police station. Shane and Kirsty fighting in the Times Square hotel there. I thought that was really good, and I thought it really worked. I'm
not saying throwaway is a bad thing.
The inclusion of Matt Dillon I thought was really good because he just plays this ordinary character walking, like a cop, you know what I mean? He just appears in it and then just gets out of it. It wasn't like, hey, Matt's everywhere it wasn't like, let's use Matt Dillon to sell this, or anything like that. Everybody had their views.
There were famous friends. I remember going to see, let's hope I get this one right now. Yeah, it was a Peter Gabriel concert at the Point in Dublin, and Sinead actually was on as a guest as well. And there was a thing, he walked out the middle and he had a tree in the middle of the gig, and he sang at the tree and things like that. But I was standing beside this guy. Terry O'Neill was on my left, and on my right was standing beside this guy who was in a hood, and I was talking to him for a little bit, didn't know who he was necessarily, and his hood over him. And then we went over towards the bar for a drink. He took his hood off. It was Johnny Depp.
Oh yeah,
you were good friends with Johnny.
I wasn't. Shane was very good friends with him, and Johnny's a fan of the band's. So he went in and done That Woman's Got Me Drinking. Was it for Shane?
Yeah.
With the Popes. Yeah, I've never met John. I spoke to him a couple of times on telephone.
Right.
And. That's all I've done with John. I'd like to meet him.
I met him for the movie Sleepy Hollow, and he didn't talk anything about Sleepy Hollow. He just wanted to know how the Pogues were getting on.
He is, yeah. Good for him.
Here, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do this one here now because I just want to think in terms of, here we are, Yoko and Kyoko and John. So Frank, we're talking to Frank Murray here, the manager of the Pogues. A Christmas song that gets released every year is what John Lennon wanted. Well, a Christmas song that gets released every year is the one we're talking about here, A Fairytale in New York. Just in terms of the actual, getting together of the actual song itself. Okay, so the song gets written and you go into the studio. Were you there while they were doing it? Like, who was doing the vocals first? It was obviously Koch.
No, that was on the very first version, you know what I mean? But that had been about 2 or 3 years previous.
All right. So wait a minute, it was hanging around that long?
Yeah. I'd actually held it back 1 year, maybe about 18 months before it actually came out. We were going to release it then. And Elvis wanted to do something with it. I don't know what it was he wanted.
Elvis Costello, producer.
Yeah, sorry, Elvis Costello,
Yeah.
And I remember he came to a rehearsal one day, and I knew if we were going to have the song out for that Christmas, it all had to be completed by the next day. And Elvis came in and he said, no, we'll do that next week. And I just thought, beautiful. And I just said, okay, we have to put this single aside now because we're not going to reach our deadline, and we'll release it next year. And
you would have seen too much of a rush.
Too much of a rush, but then it wasn't finished, you know what I mean? And I still wanted to get around to not having caught on the record. I know that sounds terribly cruel, but I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah.
But, or at least changing her vocal, doing something with it, you know. And so that happened. We actually had a photograph taken the next day. And I ended up sending them out as Christmas cards. You know, we had a photograph taken that was going to be the cover for the first Fairytale in New York, you know what I mean? So it took us about 18 months after that, I think, to before we got into the studio, because we were having a hassle. I was in fights with Stiff Records at the time about releasing the record and changing labels and stuff like that. So we held off out of the studio to record our record for about 2 years.
And had you been disappointed with the record company that the sales never seriously matched the undoubted popularity of the band?
We were okay in Britain and Ireland, I suppose. And then our sales, you know, like we missed out on being number one with that because the Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah.
Right? But the thing is, the Pet Shop Boys, their record had been out about 4 weeks before ours, I think. So that had been getting airplay all the time. And it was kind of by public demand. I think they were on some TV show and they'd done that. And people flipped and said, man, you got to put that song out, you know what I mean, to the Pet Shop, which they did do. And they had about a 4-week run-up. Now, because our song was a Christmas song, there was an embargo at the BBC, and they have it here at RT as well. So they don't start playing Christmas songs till the first week of December.
Till Larry says so.
Okay, Larry rules. So it was one of those things. So they were been played on the radio for about 3 or 4 weeks before us. So they had a lot more sales, and it wasn't, you know, they really did kick our asses with sales when it came to it wasn't like that. They outsold us by a couple of thousand.
Right, because in the thing here in the paper in the Examiner this morning, there's a quote from Spider, and he says, none of us believed, Spider Stacey of the Pogues, none of us believed it would get to number one, but we were all gutted when it didn't. I remember us watching its progress up the charts. I bumped into Neil Tennant of the Pet Shop Boys recently, and I mentioned the song to him, and he went, God, you're not still banging on about that.
Yeah.
But we were very disappointed at the time.
I thought it would go to number one, definitely. And I remember I started putting bets on it for number one in September of that year at the local bookies.
Are you allowed to do that?
Yeah, well, it was very funny because if you rang up, I think it was Ladbrokes at the time, and I rang up these guys and said, how much you giving for like a number one for the Pogues for Christmas? And the guy was like, there's a lunatic on the phone.
Who are the Pogues?
First of all, I didn't hear the Pogues, and second of all, it was September.
Yeah.
You know, so the most they'd give me was 20 to 1 at the time, so I took that. And then word started go around Camden that I was putting this money on, you know what I mean? So everybody started going on and putting money on the Pogues. So then it went out to 15 to 1 was the next one.
Came in 18 to 1.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. You fed me the line. All right, okay. It's also, just to get back to the video, just the final thing is, Spider says that it was like it's been done in the New York Police Department. It was actually done in a
police station, yeah. On 30th Street, yeah.
Yeah, and like they didn't really like you after a while. And he says here that they kicked you out because you were getting too loud and boisterous.
Yeah, there was a lot of substance has been taken and drink been taken, and one of our road crew, Big Charlie McLennan, who was playing, who unfortunately is no longer with us. He was playing playing Santa Claus, sorry, and he was a bit the worse for wear. Shane was, and then like. That police station at that time, that precinct, was really only used for a lot of traffic offences, and I think they hired it out for a TV series as well. So there's kind of like a skeleton police staff there. But there was a call made to downtown, you know, that mythical place downtown, and cops start arriving, you know, plainclothes men start coming to see everything.
Real cops?
Yeah, real cops.
And
there were some real cops there as well. So they were there to make sure we were okay, but... we put anybody who was a bit drunk, there were cells downstairs, you know. So we kind of put people in cells to, you know, it's like to sleep off and things like that. But it was a great day. It was a brilliant day. And then later on that day we had to go and do the thing with the band, you know, the Emerald Society pipe band, which is another great experience.
Right.
They were great guys. You know, they were well oiled up as well.
Really?
Yeah.
As in like boys from the NYPD choir kind of stuff?
Yeah. As the Emerald Society pipe band, you know what I mean? They're the people who are in it. Well, I don't think there is a choir, you know what I mean? So it was just artistic.
And whose idea was it to get Fiacre in to do the strings?
Mine.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I just Fiacre
It needed the Christmas thing, did it?
Yeah. Well, we needed strings, and the surprising thing was Steve Lillywhite wanted to use a synth. You know, like a Fairlight machine.
Oh, how retro 80s. No, it is the 80s.
And he had never actually recorded strings before, I don't think.
Right.
And we insisted on strings. And then I'd worked a long time with Fiacre, going back to Vagabonds of the Western World with Thin Lizzy.
Oh, yeah.
So, and Fiacre had also done, was it Rainy Night in Soho? Yeah, as well. You know what I mean? So I said, no, we get Fiacre Trench. And I made a call to Fiacre, and I told him, I think, to expect a call from Steve and what was going on.
Do things always go wrong at the end in bands? I mean, like, did you not learn everything you needed to learn from Lizzie? Like, the amount of people that have been ripped off by the industry is every single person that's ever been in the industry. But then they kind of learn from it and they make sure it doesn't happen again, Frank.
Yeah, it's not a case of... Some people's ripped off, as you know, it really is a hard thing. If you speak with what's his face, you read Keith Richards and he talks about Alan Klein or whatever like that, and I don't know whatever they don't. You know, it's not. Sometimes people are ill advised. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can put something in front of an artist. I know lots of managers who've been ripped off, big time.
Yeah,
big time. And there's lots of artists have been ripped off, and it doesn't go on too much here. But in America, I've seen some deals that people do, and particularly if you're one of those pop bands, do you know what I mean? I'd be very careful about what, But nowadays, if you want to do something with a band, whether you're signing a record company contract or a publishing contract or a management or any kind of contract, there's always a note there saying you must have somebody from that business, somebody who's an expert in that business, to look over your contract and advise you. If not, the thing is invalid.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So everybody has a chance to go and look, this means this and this. Some people are so hungry for success. And I know bands that as soon as the whiff of a record, like in those days, a record company would come near them, they would have signed their souls away.
Of course. Yeah.
Just to make them, because their own belief in themselves was, if I just get this record out, the world is going to know how brilliant I am and I'm going to be really successful. So they would have signed anything. They would have signed a blank piece of paper to get in there.
So when you look back on the Pogues, great days, yeah?
Wonderful, wonderful days, you know what I mean? But there was a lot of damage, a hell of a lot of damage, and I lost a lot of friends on the way. I lost three very good friends, and then I got damaged myself and stuff like that through it. You know what I mean? It was like a whirlwind, and I'm thankful I came out the other side. And it was a great experience, and most of all, it was very, very successful.
And what's the biggest damage? The road?
Yeah, the road. The touring all of the time. It's you can even get that. I mean, that doesn't really bug me. It's just. It's what goes on with the road. It's not doing the shows. It's everything else around that. You know what I mean? The time you spend trying to travel to places, or hanging around airports or sitting on buses, and it's just all really dead time.
Just finally, Spider says here something about the fact that, number one maybe this year. Have you any idea? Anybody know what number one is this week before Christmas? I haven't got a clue.
I haven't got a clue.
It's not Fairytail in New York.
I don't think it'll be Fairytail in New York. No. I don't think so. I think it'll be I don't know whether it's already had its chance to be number one. I think it'd be very fine if it was number two every year.
Right, exactly.
It'd be great. Because no matter what comes out every year and beats Fairytale of New York to number one, will be forgotten next year.
Yeah, exactly.
But Fairytale of New York will never be forgotten.
Never, ever be forgotten.
It's like, if you call any songs a masterpiece, it is a masterpiece, It
is. Well, listen, we leave it at that. A masterpiece, Fairytale of New York. Frank Murray, thanks a million for talking to us, Frank, and happy Christmas to you.
Happy
Good
Christmas
man.
to you.